their year-end specials on select new Holland tractors, hay and forage products, and material handling equipment. Get in on all the True Blue savings now at Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John. Hurry in. Deals end when the year does, on December 31st. For commercial use only. Customer participation subject to credit qualification and CNH Industrial Capital Canada Ltd approval. Standard terms, conditions, and other restrictions apply. Down payment may be required.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Moose Talks with your host, Doug Craig, on Moose FM.
Hey, welcome to Moose Talks on this lovely Friday morning. We were going to have Vanessa Siemens-Ford on from Peace Seniors Connect and Care, but sadly, she's trapped in the weather between here and Dawson Creek, so she will come on at a later date to talk about what they do at the Connect and Care and some of the events they've got coming up with the Christmas season. However, coming in a little early, we've got Paul Van Nostrand, the president of the Fort St. John Flyers Hockey Club. He joins me now. Good morning, Paul. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. So let's get started kind of with why you're in here. I mean, a few weeks ago, you guys were kind of ramping up for the season. Everything was ready to go for the North Peace Hockey League. And then you had to make an announcement. I'm sure everyone in the organization didn't want to make. You got to take a leave of absence. As I understand it, it's because you just didn't have enough players to fill out the roster this season. Talk a bit about why you had to make that decision and how you kind of came to it.
Well, we started our training camp at the end of September, and we had a couple of ice times that first week, and the turnout was not great, to say the least. And so we recognized that we might have some issues, so we kind of got on the phone. Lee Hartman, our general manager, got on the phone and contacted everybody we could think of who had played and who might be interested in playing. And basically, our next ice time was Monday the 7th, and we called it a Save the Flyers ice time. And that evening, we only had 14 players out, so we knew that we weren't going to be able to carry on. I'd been in contact with the league prior to that, letting them know that we were in dire straits and it was a possibility. And subsequently, that Monday evening, we made the announcement.
Okay. What would you say, and maybe there's an actual rule that says this in the league, what's the minimum amount of players you have to have in order to field a team in the national or in the Northeast Hockey League?
Well, you have to have 9 skaters and a goalie. That's the absolute minimum.
Yeah.
Otherwise, team is subject to a fine.
I see.
For not providing sufficient players. So
and that's just like on a game-by-game basis. You have to have that minimum in order to play the game and not be forfeit.
If a team shows up with less than that number, they're subject to a $1,000 fine, or it might even be a $2,000 fine. I can't remember.
I see. Okay.
But it's pretty hard to play in this league with that smaller roster.
I mean, that's 2 lines and 3 defensemen, if my math is right. And you said, and 1 goaltender. So if anyone gets injured at all, I couldn't imagine fielding a game with that few amount of players. So, wow.
We like to, typically road games, we do struggle on occasion.
Sure.
Or have in the past for sufficient bodies, but we like to be able to go on the road with 17 players if we can. The maximum we're allowed is 19, so we like to, if we're, between 15 and 17 on the road, we're in pretty good shape, but anything less than that. And so it was obvious that we weren't going to be anywhere near those numbers on a consistent basis. So
yeah. Would you say, is there kind of a magic number in your head to account for the fact that people won't be able to travel on a road trip all the time, or there'll be injuries and illnesses? What's that number for the size of the roster you would hope to have kind of in a perfect kind of situation?
Well, the number we shoot for is 25 signed players. And, up here, it's a working man's league, and you know, many of the players in the past have had an 8 and 6 shift, or they work days one week and nights the next week, and those sorts of things. So we've always felt that we needed to have 25 players because absolutely it's unusual for anyone to make absolutely every game for all of the reasons I mentioned earlier. So we have had in the past several players, you know, some players whose work allows them to rarely miss, and that's great, but that's not the norm. And so 25 is kind of the number to know that we'll have 17 or 18 or 19 on the bus.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is senior hockey. So how old are the guys on this team?
The players can be anywhere from 18 plus.
Okay.
So we actually had some 18-year-olds try out this year, which was really encouraging. They were done with minor hockey. So we hadn't had many players that young come out in previous years. So we did ask the league and BC Hockey if that was okay, and they said absolutely. So it's 18 plus. So we've had players in their early 40s play who are fantastic hockey players, but many our average age is high 20s to low 30s.
Okay. Now, why were you having such a hard time getting people out? Did you hear from players who had played previously who gave reasons as to why they wouldn't be able to commit this season to playing with you guys?
You know, this year we had a wind-up in July, and it was very well attended. We knew a couple of guys were going to retire, for lack of a better word. But, you know, this year it was sort of a perfect storm. We had a couple of guys, new babies in their lives, a couple of guys who moved out of town, a couple of guys who weren't going to be available until Christmas, a couple of guys who were going to only be available up to Christmas, and a couple of guys who had just decided to retire. So you add up a guy here, 2 guys there, 3 guys there, and pretty soon you don't have enough. So
okay. And I suppose in a league like this, everyone who plays for your team generally has to be from here for it to work, right? Or from nearby, because I think I read somewhere, maybe it was a story we did previously on this, where Scott Brooks talked to you from energeticcity.ca, that, you know, the Canucks, for example, the Dawson Creek Senior Canucks, have, you know, a larger roster that maybe you looked at, maybe some of those guys can play for us, or maybe it was that the guys who were going to play for us are going to play in Dawson Creek this year to kind of fill out that roster. Was that explored as a possibility? That, like, is that something this league could even do, is shift players around to kind of make it competitive? Or is it just, you just got to kind of look in your own backyard and hope you got enough?
Well, it's not out of the question that, you know, a player released from, say, the Dawson Creek Canucks, you know, could certainly come and try out for the Fort St. John Flyers and play for the Fort St. John Flyers. That's not out of the question. You know, the issue is that player likely to want to do that? You know, if he works in Dawson Creek or he works in Tumbler Ridge, is he going to want to play in Fort St. John? Is he going to make practices and all those things?
Absolutely.
You know, and in the past, we have had players from out of town who come in from time to time and play some weekend games, weekend series for us, have played in provincial championships just to top up our roster. You see, in the North Peace Hockey League, we're allowed 27 players because we're associated with Alberta, but the limit in BC is 30. So when we compete for the Coy Cup, or when Dawson Creek competes for the Coy Cup, they can only have 27 players in their roster for North Peace Hockey League. But when the provincials roll around, they can add 3 guys. So
I see.
In the past, we've sometimes we've added a local player or someone from out of town to round out that roster.
And these players who are playing, I mean, they're not paid. This is volunteer, kind of for fun, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
We do. You know, we've had some players. when they come in from Fort Nelson, for example, Ryan Carter lives in Fort Nelson, and he played with us last year. And we've covered his expenses. We've given him some gas money
Sure.
to come and.
You buy their jerseys and.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly, we provide most equipment, and usually what we've tried to do every year for a number of years is give the players gift cards around after Christmas.
Yeah.
Based on the their attendance, kind of almost.
Okay.
The more a player was able to contribute, then the larger the gift card, and
I see.
so a bit of an incentive. So we provide the uniforms, and we buy a number of helmets and those sorts of things, and some sticks. But the players also do purchase a lot of their own stuff. So it's a joint venture.
Yeah. So there's certainly they're juggling, and you're juggling as kind of the president of the team and the GM, players who want to play, but they have family and job commitments, and this isn't a paid position, but they do get things. And of course, road trips on the weekend, which we're going to talk a bit about in just a few minutes here on Moose Talks. Stay right there, Paul. I got a few more questions for you, if that's all right. We're going to take a quick break here on Moose Talks. We'll be right back with Paul Van Nostrand, the president of the Fort St. John Flyers Hockey Club.
Crime Stoppers allows concerned community members to help the police solve crime. Your information, that small piece of the puzzle, can bring closure to many. By calling 1-800-222-8477, you are putting the spotlight and heat on the offender where it belongs. Your call is not recorded or traced. You remain anonymous while the offender doesn't. With your help, we are making the community a safer place to live. Call Crime Stoppers now at 1-800-222-8477 and let them know what you know about criminal activity.
Now's the time to market your business and let Moose FM and energeticcity.ca help you grow your sales. Plus, right now you can do it without paying for it. You provide a product or service to Moose FM, and we provide you with the same value in advertising. Plus, as a bonus, you'll receive even more marketing when we launch halfpricewednesday.ca this November. Let us help introduce you to new customers in Fort St. John and the BC Peace. Visit halfpricewednesday.ca or call 250-787-7100 for more information.
We're hosting the games.
The games? What games?
The BC Winter Games. The biggest multi-sport event in the province. 1,800 participants in 15 different sports. It's kind of a big deal.
Wow, that is a big deal. How can I get involved?
We need 2,000 volunteers to make it happen. There are opportunities everywhere to get involved.
Where can I sign up?
Online at bcwintergames.ca or call 778-715-2020.
While the other animals are getting ready to hibernate for the winter, here at the Moose, we don't have time for that. We are busy roaming in the Peace region with the Backcountry Community Cruiser. Checking out amazing events happening this winter, fundraisers, concerts, festivals, and much more.
So are you still going to hibernate? I guess that's a no.
The Backcountry Cruiser is powered by Fort St. John, Return It, Fo and LodgeLink.
Arctech Welding and Machining. For 20 years, we've been fast, friendly, reliable, providing customers across northern BC and Alberta with custom fabrication and manufacturing, mobile welding, sandblasting, painting, and more. But we wouldn't be celebrating this milestone if it weren't for the backing of our reliable suppliers. AJ Forsyth, Praxair, Greg's Distributors, Dominion Steel, and more. So cheers. Here's to building one another up and to a bright and successful future. Thank you from Arctech Welding and Machining.
It's fall here in the Peace, and while this may sound like we're jumping in a pile of leaves, it's actually a huge pile of money. Like $10,000 huge. Want it? Buy a vehicle at any one of our 5 GP Auto Group locations and receive up to 10 grand cash back. Bad credit? Not a problem. Bankruptcy, job loss, divorce. We've seen it all. With the largest selection of new and used vehicles in the Peace. We will get you into a new ride. Visit gpautocredit.com to get started. That's gpautocredit.com. OAC, see dealer for details.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca.
Welcome back to Moose Talks. I'm Dub Crane. We're talking to Paul Van Nostrand, the president of the Fort St. John Flyers Hockey Club today. Paul, right before the break, we were talking about what players are kind of dealing with that are on your team and how it kind of became almost a perfect storm of players retiring, players moving, players, have other commitments that aren't able to kind of make it work this season, which is why ultimately you had to take a leave of absence. You just couldn't field a big enough roster to kind of get you through the season. I want to talk about road trips for a second, because based upon where we are in relation to the other teams in the league, Fort St. John has some of the longest ones when you go to play some of these other teams. Has that ever been discussed? Is there some way that you could maybe reducing the length of road trips might make it easier for players to commit? Because I can understand if you're a guy with a baby or a family at home to go away the whole weekend to play two games. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell your spouse that you're going to do that for fun, essentially, right?
Well, and we would never be away for a whole weekend, other than for a provincial championship, for example, when we went to Fort Nelson in 2015 and Terrace in 2016. We were gone we played from Tuesday to Saturday, so we were gone a week. But for our league, we're home every night, but it's usually early morning. And the league in the past has done some things to alleviate the travel somewhat. We had an East Division and a West Division, and so the last number of years, teams from the East and would only play teams from the West twice, once at home and once on the road.
Yeah.
And then the East Division teams like High Prairie and Manning, Grimshaw, they would play each other more often. And the West Division teams, Fort St. John, Dawson Creek, Grand Prairie, Spirit River, when they were in the league, we would play more games against each other. And then, so that cut down on travel considerably for the long trips. But for us to go to High Prairie, it's a good 4-hour trip one way.
Yeah.
And that's if the roads are good. If they're poor, it's longer. And so we would, on those trips, and when Valley View was in the league and Manning, we would get home between 2 and 3 in the morning, and sometimes after 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so guys are up at 6 o'clock to go to work, or 5, or whatever so it's not, it's not a, it's a big commitment. There's no doubt about it. It's a big commitment. We don't have many games. We play 20 games a year the last few years, 10 on the road, 10 at home. So it's not like, we have a huge schedule, but still there's an impact there.
Yeah.
And, with us leaving now, just so the league is now being forced to go to a full interlock, so everybody's playing everybody the same number of times. So because we've left now, Dawson Creek and Grand Prairie, they're going to High Prairie twice, and High Prairie's coming there, coming west. So our leave of absence has certainly had an impact on those teams.
Yeah. Speaking of the leave of absence, we've kind of focused on the players' side of it so far. I want to talk a few minutes about financially. What does this mean for the team from a financial standpoint? I mean, obviously you're going to save money on gas and gift cards because you're not playing any games this year. But was it a hard decision to make because even though you're kind of a society, you're going to lose revenue from attendance and concession and kind of other ways that you generate revenue. Was that a factor in the decision at all, or was it something that you had to consider in making it?
To be honest, not really. We knew unless we could field a team and be viable, then nothing else really mattered. We weren't going to knowingly go into a season fully aware that we may have to forfeit some games, and it just wasn't good for our players. For our players to go to High Prairie and to have 10 bodies playing against a team that has 19 bodies, it's just not fair. It's very hard on people, and so that was, the financial end of it was way down in the thought process. It was the driving force was lack of players.
Now, from a league standpoint, and we were discussing off air, and I'm sure anyone who's aware of the history of the league itself, this is not an occurrence that's new. That all the teams in recent memory have had to take leaves of absence. You know, Dawson Creek was out of the league for several years. Manning, basically every team has had to recently. And in fact, the Fort St. John Flyers had been in the league the longest consistently out of anybody in recent memory. How does the league take it when you make that phone call and you're like, listen, we're not going to be able to be in competition this year? Are they, are they sympathetic, or are they like, this really kind of screws us over? Or is it almost like they plan for it possibly to happen at any given time because of the difficulties in, getting men who have families, who have jobs, to play in a league like this?
Well, I don't think it's something that's planned, but it's certainly in the back, because of the recent history of teams having difficulty, it's certainly in the back of everyone's mind. I spoke personally with the president of the North Peace Hockey League leading up to our announcement, and then the night that I made the announcement, and he was, very surprised and disappointed, as we were. We had been, since the team was resurrected in 2004, we were the longest serving consistent team of all 7 that are currently in the league. So as you'd mentioned earlier, Dawson had taken a hiatus for a number of years, and every other team in the league had taken a year off here or 2 years off, and over the course of that 15 years. So it's and I was as surprised kind of as anyone. I just not surprised, but I guess when I look at the size of Fort St. John, 21,000 people, and the outlying area of say 31,000 people, why can't we get 25 hockey players? And but it's.
I mean, outside of Grand Prairie, Fort St. John's probably the largest kind of population for having a team, right?
Certainly it is. So we're. But Grand Prairie took a year off a few years ago, and they have 50,000 people there, and so why? So it's not. Sometimes it's not just players. Sometimes the volunteers who are running things decide it's time to retire, and that can leave a huge hole in any organization right from the top. So lots of different reasons.
If no one's organizing the team, there can't really be a team, even if you got the players, I guess, right? So
very hard. Yeah.
What does this mean for the team next year, and even in the future, the next 5 years? Does this matter at all, or you just you have to take it a year at a time in this league and kind of go forward that way?
Well, we had an executive meeting on the 15th of October, and we've all agreed that we're not going to go down without a fight, for sure. So we're just going to take some time now to just take the leave of absence and status quo. Come next spring, our plan is to have a number of media blitzes, and hopefully you'll invite me to be on here again next spring, and maybe even a couple of times, and we'll get in touch with all the media and our Facebook page and our Facebook profile and our website, and just really try and get it out there that we don't want to shut it down for another year. And we've talked about possibly some open house events, maybe at the rink. Say, hey, anybody who's interested in playing with the Flyers, come on down and meet with our coach Lee Hartman, our general manager, myself, and so we're gonna do what we can to get the team and ice the team next season.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear you guys are like, we're going forward no matter what.
Yeah, we are. We're not. Once we got over the kind of the stress, I guess, of it happening, and it was stressful because there's a lot of history here, and the Flyers, as Lee Hartman put it very aptly during an interview, the Flyers matter. They really do. It's people. They've been around since 1958, over 60 years, with some breaks in between there, including this year. But the Flyers matter. Minor hockey, all the teams are named after the Flyers. That happened, I don't know, 20 years ago. So it's a big deal, and we didn't take it lightly. So we don't want to see it go down. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I certainly don't want to see it go down, and I'm certain there's a lot of people in this community who don't want to see it go down. We're going to have to leave it there for today, Paul, but thank you so much for coming by to talk to me and being so candid about the way the organization is going this year and having to deal with the leave of absence. I really appreciate it.
Really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. All right, we'll be right back on Moose Talks to wrap things up.
The flavor of Italian sausage. The power of plant protein. Panago's new Beyond Meat pizzas are here. Try the tangy Beyond Summer Barbecue with roasted corn medley. Or dial up the heat with the Beyond Spicy Calabrese. Try it with classic mozzarella or our dairy-free version. Order yours at Panago.com or download the Panago app on now.
SS Automotive Tread Pro would like to remind you that sadly, winter is on its way, and they want you to be safe this winter with a new set of Firestone winter tires. Firestone tires provide excellent handling in winter conditions as well as reliable durability. SS Automotive Tread Pro is offering spectacular savings on their winter lineup. Firestone and SS Automotive Tread Pro, names you can trust. Visit SS Automotive in Taylor or call 250-789-3770.
Our community first. This is Moose Talks with Dub Craig on Moose FM.
All right, our thanks again to Paul Van Nostrand, the president of the Fort St. John Flyers Hockey Club, for stopping by to chat. And again, our regrets that Vanessa Siemens-Ford of Peace Seniors Connect and Care couldn't make it. We'll try and reschedule her for another time. I did want to quickly give a shameless plug out to my wife, who is in the Addams Family musical that's opening tonight at the North Peace Cultural Center. Serena was there the other night. She says it's wonderful. I'm sure it is. It's going to be great. Tickets are $25. You can get them at npcc.bc.ca or at the North Peace Cultural Center box office. And if you can't go this weekend, they've got another 4 shows next week. More info at npcc.bc.ca. That's it for Moose Talks this week. Studio production is by Serena Deschner. I'm Dub Craig. Keep being awesome.
Join us next Friday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Moose Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.